Director of the School of Labor and Employment Relations. And on behalf of the school, I'd like to welcome everyone to this, our 19th annual Outstanding Alumni Lecture. This event is sponsored by our school's Alumni Board. We have one of the most active and supportive alumni boards of any academic unit here at Penn State. And for 19 years, they sponsored a lecture that brings an outstanding alumni to talk about their career and to offer advice to our students who are at the early stages of life. Our alumni board puts a lot of time and effort. They come from all over the country twice a year to attend meetings, and I'd like the members of the board who are here tonight to stand and be recognized. Before we start the lecture, just a few ground rules. The lecture and the questions to follow will run about an hour or a little longer. There's no rush to get out of here. I checked the news before we started, and there's apparently an electrical shortage in downtown State College that has hit all of the bars and restaurants and will not apparently be lifted till precisely 9 o'clock. And for those of you who are rushing to the library, apparently has a different state time. So there's nowhere to go. We very much ask you, very much would like you to stay for questions. Stay until the end. The speaker I'm going to be very considerate of you and not keep you for the full 2 hours. These remarks are going to be relatively brief. We're going to do questions afterwards, and that's an opportunity for you to really get the brain of someone who's had a very successful career. So at this point, I'd like to introduce one of the co-chairs of our alumni board to introduce the speaker, Jane Moyer. Okay.
So my name is Jane Moyer, and I come from Boston, and I'm a co-chair of the Alumni Board, as Dr. Thompson said, and it is my honor to introduce to you Rexford Simpson. It is Rexford, just Rex. Gotta add that sound, that's awesome. But anyway, it is my absolute honor to introduce Rex, and I'm sure that he's expecting that I'm going to come up here and I'm going to tell you stories, which I could, that I'll tell you some jokes about him, which I could, that perhaps when the electricity comes on the bars later, I'm happy to tell you all about Rex. But what I'd like to say more than anything is that, you know, Paul alluded to the fact that Rex has done an awful lot in his career, and that's true. He's quite old, but he's aged brilliantly. So that is the only joke I'm going to tell you about Rex. Because you can read his bio. I mean, I know it's been posted around. I know it's been sent around to you. So I'm not going to read this to you. But what I want to say about Rex is that Rex is a rock star HR professional. So the thing that I love about human resources and being part of HR is that it's not just one discipline. Right? So certainly there's labor, and you think about human resources, which I'm in, many of you are interested in as well. There are so many aspects to them. There's compensation, there's benefits, there's shared services, certainly there's labor relations, there's lots to it. Rex has done it all. He has ticked all of the boxes of the HR disciplines, and that is quite an accomplishment, and it takes a long time. So he has aged well, just like Rex. But Rex is a consummate HR professional. Rex is also someone with incredible vision about what work is and what work can be. So it's about making sure that people are fully heard and fairly treated. And Rex has done that in multiple organizations, in multiple industries in his career. Rex is a leader of leaders. He's been a leader certainly in our organization. He's been a leader in LER. But more than anything, Rex has been a tireless advocate for Penn State, for its students, and to our school's vision. So, like I said, I can tell you lots of stories about Rex, but what I hope you take away from his remarks tonight is that he's a consummate HR professional. He's got an awful lot to teach all of us, and it's my sheer delight to recognize and
Jane. I don't know if everyone can hear me, or if everyone wants to hear me. Can you hear me in the back? Okay, good. One thing I'd like to do, because first of all, I'm not sure this thing is going to get any better than it already has been. And I know that you are going to be in a rush to the library. So I think the best thing to do is get the applause out of the way before we start. And then when I'm done, I'll just say thank you, and then you can leave. And then we'll the play. We're going to back up and we're going to pretend that it's ending. When I say thank you, that's your cue. Go crazy, about 30 seconds, stand your nose, whistles, lots of noise, okay? All right, now, we go back, we slide. When the slides work.
Wait, just go forward. Your slides are forward. That's the first one.
And the second one?
Yeah, very second one.
Okay.
See you next.
We have to take that.
Somebody else is 30 years old.
Maintenance.
There it is. Okay. Now if I go back. How do I go back? I can't go back. Okay. All right. Well, that was a great idea that Bill mentioned. So anyway, I'm going to say thank you. That's your cue. Wild applause. 20 seconds. We'll cut it off, and then we'll do it. Okay. Thank you very much. Blood flow and everything is cool. Okay. So now, I've been coming to these talks since 1999, and we've had some very impressive people speak here who've done some really wonderful things. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago we had Adam Telefero speak, and many of you know his story. He was a 19-year-old freshman football player, went in against Ohio State and broke his neck trying to make a tackle. He was told he'd never walk again. 19 years old, if you can imagine that happened to you. And yet, less than 2 years later, after a lot of physical therapy and a lot of extra medical attention, he led the team out in a game against Miami and ran out on the field to one of the biggest crowds in Beaver Stadium history. I'll be honest, I don't think there was a dry eye in the house when Adam talked, and I don't have anything that's going to match what Adam had to say. I think a couple years after that, we had Nick Shaw, and you may have had Nick come into your class and talk. Nick became a partner and VP at Price Waterhouse at like age 33, phenomenally intelligent and sharp guy. I became a VP at age 58, I think. So I can't match Nick as far as his accomplishments. And I was just thinking, 2 years ago, Jackie Grova here in the second row told her story. And she was a 21-year-old recent graduate of Penn State and went underground as the first woman to go underground in the Western Pennsylvania coal mine. And for those of you who come from coal mining country, you can appreciate the significance of breaking down a cultural barrier like that. And I'll be honest again that I don't have anything that can match Jackie's accomplishments. So I could continue to go down memory lane, but my point is that we've had a lot of impressive people here, and a lot of you may be sitting here and saying, so why is he here? You know, we run out of everyone else, and now it's his shot. You know, I wonder about that a little bit myself. I graduated from Penn State with a fairly pedestrian GPA, probably not the most inspired student that we had. I stayed in school because the alternative was Vietnam, and Penn State certainly seemed a lot more attractive than that. Somehow, I think after working a couple of years, I applied to Pitt Law School, and somebody added my weight to my LSAT, and I snuck in, went on to law school, and worked for the NLRB for a while, then went into the private industry, and I had a nice career. Worked hard, worked my way up the corporate ladder, eventually became a vice president. But again, I didn't change the world. I can't say that I've done anything extraordinary. But I think what I do have and what I can talk about is three fundamental principles that are important to anybody as they're starting out in their career. And that's the three P's that I have as far as the start of my talk. Patience and persistence and personality, or excuse me, perspiration. Interesting Freudian slip there. So sit back and let the old guy tell you a little bit about my career. I'm going to try this slide. Yep. That's me. And there we are. Okay. So it took me almost 40 years to figure out what I really wanted to do when I grew up. After all this career in HR, I eventually went into teaching. And I now am a full-time employee of Penn State, and I work in the MPS program, teaching courses to grad students. And it's turned out to be a fulfilling career, and in many ways even more fulfilling than the 40 years I spent working in HR. So that's one of my points, that never give up, just keep hustling and good things are going to happen. And sooner or later they did for me. And I do not have a bad career in HR by any means. You know, at 62, suddenly a new door opened up and a really exciting opportunity in teaching. So, as I said, keep hustling. So whether, as you sit here, whether you have a 3.5 GPA and a killer smile and tremendous poise, or a 2.7 and a crooked smile and real sweaty palms, I think everybody can really benefit from three things. And that's patience, persistence, and perspiration. So let me start with patience. There it is. I'm a real wingback guy with these slides. And when I talk about patience, I'm really talking about being realistic and having realistic expectations. I'm not asking you to calmly sit down and sit on your hands and wait for somebody to come by and tap you on your shoulder with the opportunity of a lifetime. Because realistically, that only happens in the movies or when appearance on the firm. But I think we want to be realistic and realistic in our expectations, realistic in not fretting too much about tomorrow since we can't control it, but trying to focus in on today. While I'm on campus, I have students come up to me and say, gee, what courses should I take so I get the perfect job out of college? And what do I have to do? How can I impress interviewers? And I usually give them some sort of disappointing and bland comment about relax and be yourself and enjoy where you are, realizing that life is a marathon, not a sprint. And that's my first cliche of the night. Don't be disappointed, there'll be many more. And I think they're mildly disappointed that I don't give them this checklist of success that they can cross off things and all of a sudden achieve whatever degree of success they want. So my point in success, first of all, is you have to determine what success means to you. You got to come up with a formula of what is important to you. Hey, are you interested in making a lot of money? Nothing to be ashamed about there. And owning a big Beamer. Is your family more important to you? Is work-life balance important to you? There's all kinds of options. And the important thing is to figure out something that fits your personality and your personal situation. Let's not get hung up on what your peers are doing, or what is hot in social media, or maybe what your mother always wanted you to be. Mine wanted me to be a dentist. Absolutely no interest in being a dentist. You got to decide what's important to you. And once you have that definition, pat yourself on the back and have a drink, maybe a couple shots of Fireball, because the next thing you're you really need to do is add another P to this multiple P theme that I have here, and that's for planning. You should sit down with a sheet of paper and a pencil with a big eraser, because this is something that you're probably going to change many times, and try to come up with a plan about what you think you need to do. What are the big steps that you need to take to achieve this personal degree of success? And I know I said a couple minutes ago that you should focus on the short term and not get too hung up on the future, because you really can't control it. But I think for the purposes of this particular stage, it's important to try to figure out, try to envision looking down the road in a very general sense what you can see yourself doing, and put together this plan. You know, why is it important? Because I readily admit you're probably going to change the plan many times. Well, I think it's important because along the way, there's going to be doors that open up that you never anticipated. There's probably going to be some doors slammed shut in your face that you didn't anticipate either. The former will outnumber the latter. But it's important to have that plan, that direction, so when things come up at short notice, you're able to move in one direction or another and feel reasonably confident of what you're doing. Now, certainly, as I said, this is a plan that you can reevaluate and look at. That's why we want it in pencil. But I think you want to save those times of revision to quiet times of reflection when you're not forced to make a quick decision. Because when you have a quick decision, stick with the plan. That's the best advice I can give to you. I mentioned early on, and this is a quote by Coach Joe Paterno, assuming that I'm not allowed to mention his name anymore. But Coach Paterno had a line that said, you know, keep hustling and good things will happen. And I really believe that. Now, what he didn't say is sometimes it takes a while for these good things to happen. So you got to keep working. You got to be patient. You got to stick with your plan. Now, the toughest step in implementing the plan is typically the first step. Penn State is 4 years out of your life, and I'm talking about the next 40 years. I know that there's a lot of uneasiness, a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainty, and that's pretty understandable. But let's look at the bright side of things here. First of all, you guys are all in health. And that already tells me that you're done. You probably started out majoring in something else. We're a discovery major. You know that. I started out as an economics major before I realized how incredibly dull I was. And I was paging through a course catalog back in the old days when things were actually printed on paper, up on the 7th floor of Tenor Hall. And I found this labor management relations thing that seemed like a neat thing to do. And many of you probably discovered us because you started out in something else and it wasn't really working out. Hopefully you found this to be a good fit. And the one advantage you have that we didn't have so much in the old days are internships. Hopefully you've all had an opportunity to do an internship or two, because they're the best way to get a sneak peek into what the career is really about. But let me talk a little bit about LAR, because it's where I spent the bulk of my life. I know for most of you, LAR means HR, but certainly for others it means working in the labor movement, or as our speaker last year talked about, the government and public service. We deal with people, we hire them, we train them, we evaluate them, sometimes we have to fire them. Over the years, I've seen employees do some incredibly heartwarming, wonderful things. At the same time, I've seen some employees do some incredibly stupid things. So the one thing you're going to find out is because it's so people-oriented, it's never going to be boring. People are always going to surprise you. Hopefully, more in a positive sense than in a negative sense, but you're going to get a mix of all of it. And on any given day, you don't know which one is going to come up. But also, HR has a very technical side. You look at benefits and compensation, incredibly technical and getting more so. As the Donald was recently quoted saying, gee, healthcare is hard. Who knew? Well, we knew. HR. It's darn hard, and unfortunately going to continue to get harder. And your fiduciary duties on your 401k plan is hard. And coming up the right incentive plan where you balance the various aspects of the job is hard. There's a lot of hard things. I'm a labor lawyer, and certainly the law has become much more a part of HR in the last 20, 30 years. I don't think my father's generation ever heard of the term wrongful termination, let alone have any idea what it's all about. So there's room for all kinds of talents and personalities within HR and LER. Labor is typically the largest controllable expense in most organizations. So our strategic values of the organization is rather obvious. So my best advice is stick with us, guys, because I don't think you're going to regret it. And one saving grace that you have to appreciate is you're going to have plenty of opportunities to adjust your course. That goes back to my line about making that plan in pencil. And for me, my father worked for the federal government for his entire working career. Yet, I'm in my 7th employer at Penn State. And many of you will be on your 7th employer before you're even out of your 30s. So wherever you start is not where you're going to end up. I mean, those are the number of employers. You start counting the number of individual jobs within each employer, and that number just really expands. In fact, many of you are probably going to end up working in a job that doesn't even exist today. I mean, the rate of change is so substantial in the industry that we have no idea what jobs may be down the line. So, sitting where you are, what do you do to prepare? First of all, I think internships are great. If you haven't done internships, I urge you to do multiple internships. As I said, that's the closest way that you're going to get to learn about the job in the real world. But there's a lot of little things that I think is important. And learning to interview, learning to smile, learning to express yourself quickly, being able to have that so-called elevator speech. All those things count tremendously. I ran the recruiting function at Honda for 12 years, and I sat in that room many times after we went through a day of interviewing. We gave job offers to people for some of the weirdest reasons, because we just had a feeling the way they looked at you, the way they smiled, the way they responded. It wasn't necessarily always what they said, but how they said it with a degree of self-confidence makes all the difference in the world. And not everybody's born with that degree of self-confidence. You've got to work on it. When I was here, I actually was in the reserves for a while. I could get on, came back, and I interviewed day after day after day because I had like a 2-month period before school started. And when you're asked for about the 35th time, what are your weaknesses and what you need to improve on, you come up with a pretty good answer that sounds pretty good. I usually may take 20 or 25 times to work on it, but it starts to come out pretty smooth. So learning to interview and spending the time to improve on those things is extremely important. It's as important as any classroom can be. I don't want to denigrate high GPA because Clark could throw something at me. And realistically, you're going to need a high GPA to even get in the board of the interview. But once you do get into the interview, boy, those little things to you actually can be a big thing as far as making job decisions. But okay, let's assume that you got through the interview procedure and you're at your first job. So what's important next? And I'm going to jump out of order. I've given up on the slides because I don't want to task apparently all that well. But let's get into perspiration. And as much as we all seek the magic bullet with an easy way out, the fact is that hard work is always going to be a central part of anybody's success. You're going to need to perform. Again, I'll repeat the fraternal line of keep hustling and good things will happen. But hustling requires effort. Work is hard. And that's why they call it work. But we still have to be realistic. All this talk about giving 110% or living out every day like it should last, it's just not very realistic. It's not sustainable. In fact, I figured out the other day that if you give 110% every day, in 10 days, you'll disappear. Which shows why I probably wasn't a math major. But my point is, it's unsustainable to work at 110% every day. So you've got to find a level of work that is sustainable, that is going to meet the expectations of your boss, and give yourself an opportunity every once in a while to hit a home run. Babe Ruth, remember Babe Ruth for his home runs, but he struck out thousands of times, and nobody remembers that. So every once in a while, you can pull a rabbit out of a hat, you can impress the crap out of people, and they remember that. And again, it's finding that level of productivity, and also making sure that everything that you do, everything you generate, is professional and presentable. If your name is on that report, it represents you, your work ethic, your professionalism, your reputation, so make it look good. And that means continue to pay attention to little things, like reading that email before it goes out. I teach online, so I deal with emails every day, and I'm never going to send you an email that I haven't read, and I know that it says exactly what I want to say before it goes out. Well, I wish students understood that basic rule. We draw an awful lot of impressions from what we see on those rules that go on. So take a little extra effort to clean up things like emails to make all the difference in the world. And again, it's reaching a level of performance that is sustainable, that you can continue to do day in and day out. It's not necessary that you be head and shoulders above everyone else. You can kind of get your forehead up above. That's really all it takes. And you add in, as I said, every once in a while, something where you really can improve big time and pull a rabbit out of the hat, and you're going to press the heck out of anybody. It reminds me of the two guys being chased by a bear. You don't have to worry about being a superstar and outrunning the bear. All you got to do is outrun the other guy. And that's so true at work. Set a pace that is sustainable and meets expectations and gives yourself an opportunity to do something special every day. All right, the third one is persistence. And I'm going to tell you an HR story. And this is an HR story that I encountered at every employer that I ever worked for. And it's a situation where we have an internal promotion come up. And we'll have two groups of people that we're considering. One is what we'll call the steady Eddies. And steady Eddies may be male and may be female. But they're the backbone of most organizations. These are the people who come to work every day, they do their job, they don't complain. The first one is to volunteer when you need anything extra done. So they seem like the perfect employee. And Steady Eddie really wants this promotion, and he or she is going to do a heck of a good job in that new position. So, easy choice, right? Well, it would be, but there's always complications. After all, a good story we would have some complications. Because on the other hand, you're going to have poly potential. And she can be a hero, but this is a person, young person generally, who shows tremendous potential. And the big bosses know that the poly potential is the potential, the future of the company. She has the potential to be a CEO. Steady Eddie, going to do a heck of a job in that job, but he's probably not going to rise above that job. That's his level of confidence. So you have the pressure of Steady Eddie on the one hand, who again worked his rear end for the job, deserves the job. In fact, everyone in the office is pulling for Steady Eddie, and yet you got this voice coming from behind you, unfortunately your boss, saying, you got to take care of Polly. We need to promote Polly. We need to develop Polly. She's the future of the company. So we've got to get her these opportunities. And she'll do a fine job too. So, real life situation, faced this dozens of times. What do you guys do? They've got a different strong of hands. How many promote Steady Eddie, thinking it's the right thing to do? Anybody want to raise their hand? Poly potential. How many vote for poly potential? Okay. How many call in sick instead of help? It's a tough decision, but it's a typical HR decision that comes up all the time. What did I do in those situations? Balance it as best you can. You're going to promote steady Eddie where you can. You're going to throw a couple of bones to the pulleys of the world to keep the big bosses off your back, because that's a realistic thing that you deal with at work that they may not talk a lot about in school. But, it's there. Every once in a while, you can try to see if you can come up with a reorg and give somebody a fancy title, a little more money. Every once in a while, employers actually do work, and you can get on it that way. But it's a tough everyday decision that you have to make, and there's not a 100% right or wrong answer. But those are the sorts of dilemmas that we face all the time in HR. I try to answer those things. You try to look at things of what other promotions do we see coming down the line in the near future, and the degree of political pressure that you're facing realistically you have to look at. And again, you do the best you can to make the best call that you can. Now, why did I bring up this example? I brought it up because that's what you don't want to be. You don't want to be a steady Eddie. You want to be a steady Eddie to the degree that you're performing well, as I talked about before. But you don't want performing at maximum level of responsibility or some phrase like that stamped on your personnel file. You want to avoid being viewed as, hey, nice guy, hard worker, but at the level of he's performing at this level, proper level now. So how do you avoid getting stuck in the steady Eddie bag? And it's really a lot of it is marketing. And I think it's important that other people know that you're good, and they also know that you're available and you're interested in trying to move up in the organization. And that's easily said, but executing that without offending your boss and other people takes a degree of finesse. So what's the plan? How do you get rolling on this promotion track? First of all, you get out and about and join committees, volunteer, attend social events, participate in after-work activities to the extent you can. You want to get known. You want to get your face known, and you want people to see you working, whether it's part of the bowling team or part of the committee planning the holiday party, or whether you work on some high-level committee if you're fortunate enough to maybe redesign the executive comp program. My point is, it can be a small thing or a big thing. It's just making that positive impression. Again, I participated in meeting after meetings where we're discussing candidates who can promote one or another. And a senior member of the management team will speak up and say, I met Jeff on the softball team, or I work with Mary on planning a company picnic. Something that actually nothing to do with what you're the promotions for. But they'll say something positive about your enthusiasm and how you're detail-oriented and how you work so hard. And time after time, when you see people getting promoted on little things like that. So, but more than that, I think on the outside, you also want to network like crazy. There are HR groups in most every decent-sized metropolitan area in the U.S. They're very valuable from a point of view of professional development, but they're also very valuable in hearing about job opportunities. Same thing with Penn State alumni groups. You can learn a lot about what's going on as far as job opportunities, networking that way. Also, you got to keep continuing to do the basics, keep your resume up to date, and your LinkedIn profiles up, and all kinds of other postings on job boards. And when the opportunities finally come, what do? That's why we have that plan. Go back to the plan, and does this job opportunity fit in with the plan? Is that going to advance the plan, or is that going to be a questionable move? The fact of the matter is, in corporate life, if you stay where you're working, doing what you're doing, you're looking at a 3% increase year after year after year. That's what it's been for the last 10 years. And maybe you're laughing, but you just announced a 3% increase at your place. Yeah. So to really make the big moves, unfortunately, you are going to have to leave at the time. Now you should assess where you are as far as future opportunities coming down. Because maybe there's somebody in a plum job not too far ahead of you that's getting ready for retirement. So you don't rush into it. But certainly, leaving the organization is oftentimes the only way to really get ahead as far as finances are concerned. And over time, you're going to make decisions, and hopefully most of them are going to be positive. Occasionally, you're going to run into one that didn't work out. You're going to get a step back. But again, there's going to be other opportunities, and hopefully you're going to make it up next time. So it all comes together for most of us. Sooner or later, you get the job that you're really looking for, and by then the brown hair may be a little grayer. But once you find it, enjoy it. But even once you get that job, as you thought was your goal, again, I say keep hustling because you never can know what can happen. Even in the fourth quarter, as I hope we find out on Saturday, good things can happen. And that's what happened to me. And let me go back and finish my story. I finally made it to Vice President of Human Resources. And I had the corner office. They had a big red leather sofa. I mean, the director gets the table and chairs. Got to be a big get the sofa. Had the sofa. Even had a reserved parking space out front. The park was easy. Very, very important. So I was in pretty good shape. In fact, I reached a point financially. My spouse had a good job where, for the first time in my life, I could go into the boss if I didn't like something and say, screw you, I'm out of here. And for all the 40 years prior to that, you had the mortgage, you got the car payments, you got kids' tuition, you got braces, you got all kinds of things, and you keep your mouth shut. And that frustration builds up over time. And I was finally free of those shackles, and it was very enjoyable. And then finally, I get an email from Paul Clark. And I figured, well, he probably wants me to come to Penn State, talk to some of the students, I'm a big shot, red couch, parking space out front. I'm going to give a little wisdom, they're going to be very impressed, they're going to give me great applause. I even have 3 people stand up, I counted them. Which was more than what stood up at Donald's inauguration. I'm going to have Sean Spicer compare my crowd to Franklin. Speaking of Monty's, I want to see who actually outgrew each other. But anyway, Clark offered me a job. I want to teach online. And this was 2008, and actually, 2 of us were the first 2 practitioners to offer. Jane Moyer was the other. Jane and I came up to Penn State in August and met with, led by Billy Willits, and I went to this online education, this really education, but I think my ego got the best of me in saying, well, I can inspire these kids even if it's online. So I signed up, and it was a tremendously eye-opening experience. And I ended up being the one inspired probably more than my students were, and won an award, and everything seemed to be pretty keen. I was enjoying having this extra outlet of my intellectual curiosity. And then some years later, the next call came, and hey, we got a full-time opening, you want to do this full-time. And that's a little tougher decision. The pay, about a quarter you're making as a VP, the red couch is gone, I'm working at home, I don't have a parking space. The Beamer gets traded in. But what do you do? I mean, you ride the corporate gravy train for a while. It's enjoyable work. It's good money, or you do this teaching thing. And obviously, I chose what I chose, and have not looking back. So that's my story, and what's it all about? It really comes down a lot to patience and persistence, and a lot of perspiration. So my closing thoughts. Let me end this with a big bang, a whimper, depending upon your point of view. I tell these three things to my students at the end of every semester, and I truly believe in them. The first one is in that Paterno quote that I probably mentioned 4 times. Keep hustling and good things will happen. Throughout the years, you're going to have some disappointments in your career. There's going to be promotions that you know you were the best candidate for that you're not going to get for a variety of reasons, some which you may never understand. Maybe you were viewed as the steady Eddie and all that potential got picked instead of you. There's going to be times where you're going to be misunderstood and misquoted, or even worse, ignored. But really, if you keep hustling and do your best, there's going to be the time where the right opportunity is going to come along, and then it's up to you to do the best you can with what you're given. The second point that I always tell students is to focus on doing right, not being right. Someone wiser than me, and I think when I hit 40, I realized those people actually exist. And they exist in increasing numbers the older I get. But someone wiser once said that, what did that person say? That good things happen to those who don't work and get some credit. I'm sorry. And that's true. I mean, if you focus in on, what am I doing and why am I doing it, rather than just doing the right thing, people are going to notice, and it's going to pay off in the long run. Because so many times in your job, you keep working hard, and you wonder, is anybody really noticing? And they are. You may not realize it. It may take a while for it to come to a head. They are. So focus in on doing right, not necessarily being good, and it'll pay off. And the third point comes from my mother, and it's dress a little nicer than we have to. That's it. That's what I got. Thanks. If I want to see the slides, if I didn't...
Okay, no, the slides then. We have a few minutes for questions. Would you like to help moderate that? Who has questions for Excellence? Illustrious speaker.
That's all right. Or not, yes. Yes, please.
I guess it's always
I think throughout the years, labor relations work was probably the most satisfying. I was talking to Paul Whitehead, I don't know if Paul is here tonight. We were talking, I Paul in the morning, we were talking about collective bargaining. And to have a group of people sitting down across the table talking about problems and trying to come up with solutions to problems is, I don't know, the purest form of collaboration and the experience. I mean, you disagree, but it's not like a courtroom for a lawyer where you have a judge and jury with all these complicated rules as far as that is concerned. It's just a group of people, men and women, talking to each other and going back and forth trying to solve a problem, whether it's, how can we balance this healthcare cost and what's the right mix of benefit things, adjust some odds and ends to squeeze a little more advantage out of one thing that we can apply somewhere else. That was the most satisfying. Being able to hire people and promote them and have them come in and shake your hand with a big smile on your face is satisfying too. But I think in the big picture, collective bargaining, do more of that now. I don't want to get into a political statement because that goes downhill pretty quickly. But it's a great system where people can sit across the table and hash things out. And sometimes yell a little bit. Sometimes someone yelling is a little put on. I did a little bit of play acting during collective bargaining. It's all part of the game, but it was, I don't know, it was enjoyable. Yes, sir.
What is it too early to have the protocol?
When is it too early? No, I don't think it's ever too early. And I think just getting on LinkedIn and getting your name out there, I think it takes a while to figure out the right keywords. I mean, not just in LinkedIn, but resumes today, so much are reviewed by a computer. We're looking for keywords. And so understanding how to construct it, put the right words in there so your name pops to the top, takes a little bit of practice. And I think the earlier you're out there, kicking things around and trying things, the better. And again, you're on LinkedIn and you're getting other bits of information that they have on their site. I think that's all very important.
Yes, sir.
As an HR executive, you help people succeed in their career and make them more productive. How do you become productive as an HR? If you are working for, if you are in the HR department of the company, how do you succeed?
I think that's a good question. I think the toughest thing in HR is being able to set your priorities, understand how can I have the greatest impact on the organization. What's our biggest problems, and then we can focus on it and try to resolve, or even get resolved, maybe we can relieve them to some degree. But in HR, there's so much minutia that comes up, that little things that distract something. Susie slipped in the parking lot and broke her ankle, and she's supposed to do some presentation, but little things like that, but they come up so often, and there's so many different things trying to distract you from things. So the toughest thing is staying focused, setting your priorities, keep making progress on those priorities every day. Some days you're not going to make as much progress as you hoped you would make because some of these distractions that come up have to be dealt with. But I think it's being able to put aside a little time every day to work on those things, to continue to move forward, even though the steps you were hoping to make on it may not be as big as you hoped they would be. But and you have to sit down as far as the rest of the senior management team and also determine what's important. It's almost like a little bit of collective bargaining. I mean, what you think as an HR professional is the most important thing in the organization may not be what your CEO feels, and you got to sit down and try to convince him or her that you're right, and ultimately they're going to make a call, and you're going to have to follow what they're doing. So you always don't get your way, but as long as you get your say, I think it's the most important thing. Yes.
I'm curious, what inspired you to go to law school, and what advice would you give to us who want to explore some sort of tell our career pathway through going to law school?
I think I graduated from Penn State in March. This was back when we had calendar quarters. So I came out in March, and I interviewed on campus and said, I don't know how many different interviews I had, and the last people I talked to were Westinghouse Electric, which is one of the many companies that no longer exist. And I took a job in South Philadelphia, right next to the airport. And it was a steam turbine plant. We made big things that created electricity for public utilities. I worked there for 3 years. I just don't know what the hell they made. Steam turbines. And we had a very contentious union, the UE, and you probably read in the labor history about the history of the UE and the Communist Party and all kinds of other things. But they were a tough group. We had our recruiting trailer was firebombed in the middle of one of our strikes, which the union denied any knowledge of. Coincidence. But we had a tough relationship, and some of it was what management brought on themselves. But anyway, the VP of HR, guy by the name of Al Pettit, was a graduate of the University of Virginia Law School. And I was sitting down talking to him, and he really helped give me the pitch. And you really are looking for an edge. The MPS program that I'm part of, master's degrees are starting to become more common in HR, but they weren't for many, many, many years. And it's an important edge. I think having a law degree right at the top of the resume, I got to talk to people and I got considered for jobs that I otherwise wouldn't have been considered for. I think, a master's degree or some other accomplishment is very important to set you out in the crowd. As smart as you think you are, there's 30 other people, quite frankly, just as smart as you are. And you got to come up with some sort of edge that makes it special. Part of it is credentialing, and part of it is just becoming more skilled in the little things that I talked about as far as interviewing and being articulate and having some degree of psychology.
That's a good question. The one on the edge.
So my question was, obviously you've been in career for 40 years, and obviously and moved along in your career. So what are some of the ways that you kind of, make sure you're ahead of some of the trends or things changing within your career?
Well, I think, first of all, and one of the things about being a lawyer, and I'm in California and Pennsylvania, is the requirement of continuing legal education. So we're required to take courses whether we want to or not. So many hours per year. But I think it's out talking to people. You mentioned belonging to those HR groups. It's very important. How did I look? For instance, performance appraisals. Every employer I work with had a lousy performance appraisal system. We're always working on revision number 178 to make it better. And nobody's figured out how to make it really work. To the point now that more and more companies are doing away with it. We're having these touch bases and communications and things. And we'll work on that for a while until somebody will say, oh, gee, do I have something for documented, put it back to a written form. It's talking to your fellow professionals and over a couple of years and exchanging ideas on things. I think talking to consultants. I think a lot of consultants are overpaid blowhards, but some of them are sharp and have some great ideas. In fact, what I think consultants do particularly well is they tell you the obvious, but they package it in a way where you suddenly say, geez, that was in front of me all this time and I never realized it, and now I see it. So I think it's getting out of the office and talking to people. I think it's important for all young HR people to work with sales and to work with manufacturing and to get out and see what's going on. What do we really make so you don't have to stammer like I did when I'm trying to explain what my first company made. You sit down with an engineer, you know to speak English and keep it real simple. It can be very helpful. So I think it's just talking to people and not get you stuck in the office with your nose in the computer.
And you had questions?
Yeah, so do you have any advice for the other members in the room for deciding whether or not to make sure an LER or make
Well,
Do it.
yeah. I think I tried to speak a little bit, but it is a tremendously fulfilling job because it can go in so many different directions. We had what we call a defined benefit pension program in my last employer. We have actually a Honda and the tire company I worked in last. And to sit down with an actuary, you're talking about called people with an actuary, to discuss your funding requirements under a pension plan. You talk about how incredibly complex it is, and getting into different areas of the IRS code. You're doing that, and then 20 minutes later, you're talking about entertainment for the Christmas party. I think the variety is just so fantastic. that it's hard to get bored. It's tough setting those priorities, as I mentioned before, and because there's a lot of minutiae you get. I mean, I transitioned into the Japanese companies just by happenstance. Worked for Honda. We're tremendous people, and ended up with Yokohama Tire. And Honda decided at one point they wanted to become government contractors. We're going to sell natural gas vehicles to the Park Service. And the Japanese felt this would be an opportunity for us to really be viewed as truly an American company to become a government contractor. They had no idea what that really meant. And when I was sitting down and talking to them about affirmative action. Now we had a company that started as a motorcycle company, which is 99% white guys, and they decided to build automobiles, which is 96% white guys. And I'm trying to explain to them the value and the need for adding women, for instance. My wife said, if women design a car, there'd be a place to park first. And I smiled, you're smiling, but that makes sense. And then you realize that 56% of the Accords sold in the U.S. are bought by women, and things start to come together. And the Accord is the largest selling car among Hispanic buyers, and that was the end to affirmative action, is realizing who our customers were, and why can't our employees mirror who our customers were. I don't know how I got off on that track, but it's just the fact there's so many different challenges that are going to come up that are exciting things, people-based challenges, and when you can solve them or at least make a dent in them, it's just very, very satisfying. It's fun work and satisfying.
You time for one more question. No, just here, look. Okay, we have time for two. Okay.
What do you think of the popular image of the HR profession in TV, in movies, in culture?
And watch them in the rooms of their office.
Yeah, or Office Space, or pick your movie.
We talk a lot about that in our classes, and we have a class 825 that Professor Brew and I put together, and talk about the fact that HR people have to understand more than HR, and we have a portion of it where we go over what is an income statement, what's a profit and loss statement, what are the various ratios that people look at as far as inventory things are concerned, because it's important for HR people to know more than HR. The perfect compliment to an HR person is, and she's a great businesswoman who just happens to work in HR, and I think that's what we really have to be viewed. And I think the bigger companies are getting that way because we are the largest controllable expense that most employers have. If you can figure out how to make people more productive, even if it's a 2% increment, it can have a tremendous impact on the bottom line. We talk about engagement, and like 30% of anybody's time you're surfing on the internet or worrying about whether the cops or the daughters are going to win. And how can we change that? How can we lower that to 20%? And whoever can come up with that magic bullet is going to be a superstar. So it's I think becoming more strategic and trying to solve real world problems and show that real world problem has an impact on the bottom line. So many of the old line HR people say we want to do this because it's the right thing to do. That's a bunch of crap. We want to do it because it's going to make more money for the company. That's why the company is doing it. And I think once you can think about that, the image is changing.
Okay, one final question.
I swear this isn't a weird question. Jobs are often, or your career is often looked at as defined as a job, something you do for money, a career, something that you like, but you climb it, and call something that you're born to do. Looking back over, we won't look at the number of years, throughout, did you touch all three, and what was your call if you did?
There are places that I worked at that I was stuck, that I needed a job, and you got to keep going. You got to keep the money coming in, because you got to pay the mortgage and you got to put food on the table. I had a couple of those, and you work as hard as you can to get out of there and find something that is more rewarding. But there's certainly times where you're going to be stuck in something that isn't particularly rewarding or satisfying, and you got to suck it up and do the best you can to get through it. So I had some who were just jobs. I think as you move up the ladder, you get more into the career and calling things, because you can have more impact. And you know, when you see the impact that you do, it's a tremendous motivator. I think the calling thing, the teaching thing came at the right place at the right time, and it's been tremendously satisfying. And I think to turn a light on in somebody's head, saying, that's a good idea, I never thought of that. And that maybe is the most satisfying thing. That's it. Okay.
Thank you so very much.
Bars are open.